Thank you for joining us on 1460 WVOX, America's great community radio station where many different voices are heard in the land. Opinions expressed on our community and open line programs are not necessarily those of the station, its management, or sponsors. As always, we're privileged to amplify the voice of the people here on Vox Populi 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com for you and yours.
The bureaucrats and City Hall types are not exactly thrilled when you take to the airwaves to vent on 1460 WVOX.
1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses with John Sharan and Ardina Seward. And it's the day before Election Day, and all through the land, there is rain that's coming hardened. And I wonder where the votes will stand as a result of the bad weather, at least here in the Northeast.
Says the man who has his voice back.
Mostly I have my voice back.
Yeah, but it's a better show when you do that, because you can actually, dig into something and follow it up.
That's true. Ardina?
It almost inspires a poem. It was the day before election, and all in the house, everything was quiet as a mouse. That's awful.
Except for Peter Moses.
That was awful.
That was really.
I thought it was going to be.
Ardina, I thought it was going to be much better than that.
I thought it was going to be something along the lines, and all through the house, people wondered whether they were going to have a chair to sit in.
Well, that's even worse. We have a guest on who. Can you please rescue us? Michael Wildis, I know. Are you the current mayor of Englewood, or are you running for mayor of Englewood for the first time?
And so, first, it's Michael Wilds. Honored to meet everybody, and I will rescue you.
By the way, I'm going to kill
the mayor of Englewood in the past, and I'm on the ballot for tomorrow.
That was my fault, Michael.
I'm going to kill her.
I pronounce it as Wildis.
How to pronounce?
No, it's okay. Pleasure meeting everybody.
Okay.
So, since you're not in Westchester here, and I don't know how interested people are in the out-of-town, are you running as I'm assuming you're running as a Democrat, or am I wrong?
Yes, sir. I'm running as a Democrat. I was involved in municipal government for 11 years in the past. I was a city councilman for 2 terms, and then 2 terms as a mayor. I took a break to raise my family and dig in deep into my law practice, and found as an empty nester that I had a little more time on my hands, and it's my privilege actually to get back in the political fray. And we have a wonderful ballot of just great Democrats and good candidates, and we're all very excited, and we're hoping that our senator will be returned for another 6 years. We're getting out the vote as we speak.
Yes, but wait. You were a federal prosecutor.
Right.
And you're flacking for Menendez?
Well, first of all, I wasn't the federal. I was a federal prosecutor.
I mispronounced it? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And I am absolutely a fan of the senator who's exonerated of charges. And the truth is, he's a leader when it comes to most important things that affect the livelihood of not just residents of the city of that I hope to represent, the state that I live in, but also our nation. I'm a critical leader in the Latino community.
That he is.
Immigration reform and a score of other things. So I wouldn't believe all the crapola that you're seeing on television. It's a lot of hype just to scare people.
By the way, I remember covering Bob Menendez. I worked at Channel 9 News for 8 years as an investigative and political producer, and before that I was a New York Post reporter. So, I mean, I certainly interviewed many people who knew Menendez or the candidate and sitting senator himself. So I'm not sitting here without any knowledge of Bob Menendez. And when you talk about New Jersey politicians, I don't know that any of your predecessors in Englewood have ever gone to prison, but Hudson County and some of the other counties in New Jersey, including the city of Patterson, have had patterns of corruption that go back at least 40 or 50 years. So let's not pretend that New Jersey has not been rife with politicians who've done the wrong thing and ended up in prison for them, right?
But a lot.
I don't agree with guilt by association. I'm not
suggesting you are, but you're making
a personal relationship with the gentleman and know the way he leads his life, both personally, the kind of lawyer, mayor, and and leader that he has been for years. portends good things compared to what we're seeing right now going on in Washington.
Right.
And when it comes to the space that I occupy as an immigration lawyer, I know that he was not just one of the Gang of Eight trying to face the nation in the right direction on immigration, but he understands the challenge, the economic challenge that we have, and the homeland security metrics that are involved.
I'm sure that part is true. I don't agree with you about the kind of person that he is from my own experiences, but I don't know him the way you do. Now, before we go to break, we only have 2 minutes, and then we're going to have a fairly substantial break. What are the issues confronting Englewood? Because we're on this side of the Hudson, and you're over there, and I'm assuming that most of the issues that we have here are the same as there. But what are your issues?
Well, the issues are historic issues that unfortunately have plagued the community for a long time. A historic bedroom community to Wall Street. It literally is a city divided by a track where the schools are fledgling, and the malfeasance as far as expenditures is off the charts. They've basically spent down a surplus that we enjoyed when I was mayor the last time, and there's a lack of vision, and we're trying to renew not just the spirit of Englewood, but make sure that young couples will want to move back into the community, assured that their children will have a better education than all, and that the Central Business District and the kind of redevelopment is tempered and measured by the kind of character, those namesake of our community, those beautiful trees. I've raised 4 beautiful children in that city, and I'm so glad that my wife won the point source.
And you'll have to hold that thought there, Michael, because we have a commercial break coming up. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. We'll be back right after a brief Fox News break, so stay tuned.
1460 WVOX.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
We are back. We are here. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio. Thanks for sticking with us, folks. I am Ardina Seward, along with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our guest, our out studio guest today, Michael Wilds.
And outspoken.
An outspoken studio guest, Michael Wilds, who's enjoyed who wears a lot of hats and has had a very illustrious career as an attorney, a prosecutor, an author, and now who is running for mayor again of
not re-election, but he was mayor. Well, when were you mayor, by the way, before?
I was mayor from 2004 to 2010, sir.
Oh, so it was a while back. John, you must have some questions. I only usually monopolize the first quarter hour, so you go on.
Well, Michael, you've worn many hats between college professor, federal prosecutor, mayor, and auxiliary police officer. Which job have you found to be the most challenging?
Being a husband and a father.
Saves you for a good dinner tonight, doesn't it?
Oh, boy.
With a mother-in-law to boot. What can I say? No, look, I'm going to be 54 years old. I'm a second-generation immigration lawyer. I helped my dad put together a book that he authored 2 years ago on a famous case. He was John Lennon's immigration lawyer when they were taking on the Nixon administration. And I realized that I had the privilege of seeing America in a snapshot from different vantage points, and I wanted to coin it, and I put this book together. The book is called Safe Haven in America, Battles to Open the Golden Door. Alan Dershowitz wrote the foreword, and it's a compilation of about 12 or 13 of the sexier cases of whistleblowers and diplomats and defectors and all sorts of heroes that were trying to seek safe haven in the United States, and the politics and the policy and the legalities of getting them safety in America. And quite honestly, the most rewarding part of my life has always been the public service, whether it's as an auxiliary police officer, city councilman, mayor, and so forth. I took greatest pride in my work as a federal prosecutor and ridding ourselves of some bad eggs and putting some bad people away.
Who are some of those people? Who are some of those people that you help keep us safe from?
Well, I prosecuted Mario Biaggi from the Civil Division at the time after the WedTech scandal.
The cheapest congressman money could buy.
The office that I served with, I was in the Civil Division. The Criminal Division was prosecuting John Gotti at the time. And we've had a score of very low and high-profile matters involving the interdiction of all sorts of drugsters and mobsters and so forth. And we've had great experience through the years in seeing immigration from a vantage point of removing people, advocating for those good eggs that need to be here, and making sure that policy is not dormant. The deafening silence in Washington has created a vacuum so that our city taxpayers and residents end up having to pay for people to go to school when they don't have the right to be in America, living in their city, fixing them when they go to hospitals, and the kind of decline of the dialogue that we see in Washington as far as immigration reform.
Now, you're talking a little bit about some interesting topics. We've just started a trial with El Chapo Guzman. Do you think it's appropriate for him to be tried in Brooklyn?
Where would you like it, in Westchester?
Well, no, I'm just saying, is it appropriate to be there? I mean, should it be in a more secure facility on a military base? I mean, I don't know.
No, we fought pirates in the high seas, and we didn't nearly act as afraid as we were, which is my issue with the Republican Party and administration, truth be told. These are bad people, and they have to be sensitive to methods and procedures being exposed and safety of judges and jurors, but we should treat everybody with the same kind of deference, whether you're a United States Senator under accusation or a drug dealer. You are going to get a day in court. There should be in a federal court that has jurisdiction. And there are a lot of turf fights between local and federal prosecutors all the time for the privilege of bringing people to justice, but this is the right venue, and the prosecutors there are battle tested, and will get a good turnaround. If they can keep the guy behind jail, he'll be serving the rest of his life probably.
You brought up an interesting word, jurisdiction. How do we define jurisdiction for people who don't live in the United States like Guzman?
Well, it has a lot to do with extradition. When a person's brought into the United States, jurisdiction may vest in the airport, believe it or not, when he sets foot in the U.S., or there may be, because of anti-terrorism and a New York nexus because of the World Trade Center and the kind of grouping of prosecutors that we have, the Southern District of New York. But between the two of them, they're going to get really seasoned prosecutors with sharpened pencils that know what the hell they're doing.
So speaking of everybody getting an equal shot at things, what are your feelings about the president's new declaration about revoking birthright citizenship? I mean, Ted Cruz is a recipient of birthright citizenship. So Trump would have to purge some of his own Republican Party members.
Well, Ardina, before we go there, remember we have to get it right. I mean, he wants to purge birthright citizenship only for people who are here illegally.
Well, Ted Cruz's parents were not legal when he was born here. Mm-hmm. So there's Ted Cruz, I think Marco Rubio, and Senator Domenici.
I think Trump would be happy if Ted Cruz was kicked out.
But what about Senator Domenici? What about Marco Rubio? How does that work, Mike?
Well, first, the executive order authority can only be used if the president has constitutional authority in the area, and it's clear in the Constitution that this is an arena for Congress. The Congress did not give it to the president, and if Congress is silent, and they have not been silent on this, then the president would have the authority. Look, the Constitution itself is clear, not only in Article 1, Section 8, where it says Congress should establish uniform rules of naturalization, but the 14th Amendment, part of those Reconstruction Amendments, 13, 14, and 15, where it was focusing on enfranchisement, but it did state in clarity that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens.
No, it says, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Which had to do with diplomats that are accepted in American Indians. If I can, and let me just finish this. The Supreme Court in 1898, in a Hallmark case, codified this, the U.S. versus ARC, and this is a case on point where the parents were subject to the Chinese Exclusion Act. They were not present in the United States lawfully, and they said that the citizenship had attached to the children. And finally, the Walter McCarran Act, an act of Congress in 1952, 18 U.S. Code 1401. If you're born in the United States, you're an American citizen. Now, look, from a political point of view, there are protections placed in the system such that
you'll have to
a
hurry.
mother coming to the United States would have to wait 21 years to be sponsored, and that mother can only be sponsored, or father, if the protections in the system.
And that's going to have to be the last word for this segment, because again we have to go to commercial. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. We're speaking with Michael Wilds, a college professor, federal prosecutor, former mayor of Englewood, New Jersey, and an expert in immigration law. We will be right back after a brief Fox News break, so stay tuned.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
And here we are. We get to do it all over again. In our final half hour of the show, you are listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I am Ardina Seward, along with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our out-studio guest today, although his presence looms large, is Michael Wilds. Now, Michael, we were talking before the break about birthright citizenship, and you've probably been, besides birthright citizenship, you are an immigration attorney, and you've been asked 1,000,001 times, I'm sure, about your relationship with Melania Trump and her parents getting them visas, citizenship, I guess. They correct my legal terminology. And at the same time, you have come out against Trump's immigration policy. So how does that work?
Well, it all starts with, truthfully, a lady of the first order, Mrs. Trump, who understood from day one when I met her that I was a very proud Democrat. I had the privilege of working with the president and many of his companies, Trump Models, Miss Universe, and so forth, for about 10 or 15 years on their immigration matters. And then when it came down to explaining her immigration proceedings, Mrs. Trump gave me permission to state that I was not going to be voting for her husband, and respected me independently of the politics. And I've always respected my station as a lawyer, separate from the politics. I've had the privilege now of representing Mrs. Trump, her parents, her sister, and it was very easy for me to wear the different hats and express myself as I have to the president and to the public. I believe the president is well-intended. I believe that his desire to make sure that we turn into a more lawful process, a more merit-based system, is laudable. And I also appreciate that he's not a bigot, and we have to give credit where credit is due with some of the success that we see on immigration. I say that as a former federal prosecutor and a father that appreciates the rule of law. But I also have a snapshot of what it's like to build a wall on one side of the country when you have 12 million people here unlawfully. And then you're going to change some of the governing rules, so you'll have 24 million people potentially unlawfully, and porous borders in the northern part of our nation. And that immigration, if given the right kind of seasoning, is actually the sharpest tool in our box, not only to protect our homeland properly, but to embolden and renew the energy in our economy. So many years we are enfranchising foreign students into the schools so they pay expensive tuition, and then we don't onboard them into the workforce, and then we have to compete with them later. Instead of getting the best of the brightest in America, our immigration rules are archaic and they're dated, and the last time there was any effective change was with President Reagan, who, despite his conservatism and his being a Republican, gave a blanket green card to 3 million people. That number's up to 12 million right now, and we are in desperate need of change.
Well, what's going to happen now with the caravan, the migrant caravan that is, according to Trump, God forbid, is massing at the border? I mean, he's turned this whole thing into a 3-act drama that really doesn't exist, and it's basically whipped up a tremendous amount of anti-immigrant sentiment.
On the merits, it is highly political, and it's a political time. But I would ask your listeners to kind of imagine Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. The moment that these good citizens are out of their country and in Mexico, they're safe. The fact that they're dashing to the U.S. border maybe an economic dash and not a political asylum dash. And we have to be thoughtful and judicious when we show America's mercy and the way we describe it. And the fact that our Mexican compatriots cannot control the flow of immigrants through their country and will just spell it out reminds me in the old days in the 112 precinct in Forest Hills when I would walk a beat as an auxiliary police officer, and I was told by my captain, if there's a prostitute that comes into the neighborhood, just put her on another subway. It'll be somebody else's problem. That's not the responsible way of dealing with things.
A lot of the economic problems in Central America is basically blowback from the American policy going all the way back to the United Fruit Company. So it's not like these people really, really want to be here, but it's a dire effect of the American relationship with the economies there and how they have created it in many ways.
Well, political asylum has 5 predicates, and if you don't, an economic advantage or desire is not one of them. And we have to be clear that there are lines that you have to get onto. Those lines have to change because even American employers are not able to move the kind of talent and the needs that they have. We have to then recalibrate it. But again, I am a big fan of lawful immigration and safe haven declaring incredible fear interviews if they present themselves properly. Are there going to be criminals and other people that should not enter the United States? Absolutely. Should we be paying to the tune of $1,200 a day per child for the privilege of people having that bite at the apple? Well, that's one of the responsibilities we have as the world's cop. Everybody kind of feels safe and wants to be part of us. And I ask your listeners to think hard if the young children and mothers who are the abundance of the people in the caravan, if we invest in them at a young station in life and we have a comprehensive plan financially where they'll contribute to the different corridors of industry and business, pulling blueberries and making beds and our colleges, universities, and law schools, then we might want to invest in the next generation. You're not going to stop the color of America changing over time. But maybe we should get ahead of the curve and embrace proper immigration where we need it, particularly in our fisheries, in our agriculture industry, in our transportation, and in our hospitality corridor, where there aren't enough hands on deck.
Exactly, and there are I know you want to get a question, Peter. Just give me one more question. There are towns in the United States which welcome migrant labor because they don't have enough people. There's a town, for example, Lewisboro, Maine. Lewisboro, Maine has a sizable Somalian population. There are people that want them, there are people that don't want them, but there are business people who want them because they simply do not have the indigenous labor supply.
You can't pick all the blueberries or make all the beds in this country fast enough. And there's certain Manhattan fisheries where the Gulf of Mexico sees the birthing of fish and the streams go through, and then we lose our opportunity to travail that commerce. So, all the hyperbole and all the political fear-mongering aside, there are good reasons to embrace people in need and to show biblical mercy at our border.
I'm listening to you, and I've seen you on television before, but I'm trying to understand your own politics. Am I mistaken in thinking that you're a conservative Democrat?
Scoop Jackson on the phone. Good luck, by the way. Good luck trying to find
another
position of comfort. I'm also, by the way, an EMT with an ambulance service called Hatzalah. In Hebrew, it's the largest ambulance service.
Yeah.
And they teach us, if there's a position of comfort for a patient having a heart attack, try to find it. I can't find such a position in my party. I can't find it in the political dialogue, and I'm prayerful that at some point the pendulum will swing right back to the middle.
Okay. Towards the middle. So you don't dispute. So my sense is that you are.
He thinks he is the middle.
Yeah, you think you are the middle. Okay.
I am. I believe I'm in the middle. I have a full carry permit for most states throughout the United States because of the way I've been threatened. I'm not liberal on gun control laws, but I'm not scared of embracing the new normal we have since 9/11,
right,
and the fact that we have to think out of the box. And it's not us and them. It's all of us having to come up with good solutions. And I just don't trust extremes.
I completely understand. And I think all three of us are in agreement with that. By the way, when I was a teenager, I was a member of the JDL. I didn't do hot solo. They didn't offer that in the poor working class Italian community I grew up in Westchester, called Portchester.
The felling of Mr. Fold in Israel, and all the people that are outspoken these days.
And with that, I'm going to have to cut you off for a quick second because we're going to come back to you, Mike. So we're coming to our final quarter hour. We're going into a break. You are listening to Westchester Eye on the radio, WVOX 1460 AM. Our guest is Michael Wilds, who's written a book called Safe Haven. And we need you to stick with us because we're going to have more stuff to say on the other side of the break.
And we're also on WVOX.com, Ardina.
WVOX.com, I forgot that. You can listen to us on the streaming live on the internet. See you in a few.
Mouth off to your heart's content on our open line talk shows. There's no holds barred ever on your Westchester and Bronx soapbox. 1460 WVOX.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Quarter hour on Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Sharan along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and our special call-in guest is Michael Wilds, who has a very, very diverse and interesting career. He's been, among other things, a college professor, a federal prosecutor for the Eastern District of New York, a mayor of Englewood, New Jersey, an auxiliary police officer, and he's also an author. And as he very politically said, his greatest role was as husband and father. But Michael, we've got you on the show right now, and looking at the political climate, we were just talking about the fact how you considered yourself to be a conservative Democrat. What do you think exactly, a centrist? And what do you think it's going to take to try to get the two, shall I say, spoiled sets of 6-year-olds to get together and to start to act like they need to do to basically
John, it's more like
get things done?
It's more like 14-year-olds.
Fine. Well, they're trying to try and get them together so that they will act responsibly for the good of the nation.
So obviously it's a process, and a lot of people have chosen to wait it out or abandon ship because they're frustrated by the process. I actually teach in a law school, not in a college. It's Cardozo Law School, and I've had the privilege now for many years doing that, and I teach 2 classes. And I can see the young minds that are forming and about to step into the professional space, unsure and taking more issue with things that I never felt should be an issue. I mean, if you have social media and Instagram and you can color life and give it the right color and tone and change the visual and the image without having to step foot into an experience and feel it and smell it and deal with it yourself, then it's a different kind of perspective. So I think the greatest issue that we have is that people are not out there walking the walk and talking the talk in different circles. They're giving false narratives as far as leaders who really don't have the right experience, and they're not seeing things for themselves.
People don't seem to be tolerant of even listening to the other side, no matter which your position is. You just don't want to. Especially the young people, you see that unacceptable or unpopular candidates for giving a speech on campus are basically either forced to cancel their speeches or are screamed off stage. What can we do to help make these young people be more tolerant and learn how to have a dialogue?
Well, first of all, it's okay to be inconsistent. In other words, I am maybe conservative or more fiscally responsible on Israel and international issues and matters of fiscal propriety, but I am more progressive on social issues and other domestic concerns. And as you get older, your perspective changes when you have children and when you're going through experiences. I'm an employer, and I have a sense of propriety when people come to see me who can't afford our fees. and the kind of journey where I have rock stars as clients who have this air of entitlement and refuse to pay, and then I have housekeepers that not only pay, but they name their firstborn after you because you've affected a journey for them like no other as an immigration lawyer. So I've had the good privilege to realize that the people that are the composite of this nation have been made so much stronger, more vibrant. It's like an Irish stew or a cholent for those in the know, because of the beautiful different tastes and the different perspective that the diversity has brought to us. Look at the South Bronx. Look at parts of Westchester that have enjoyed a renaissance because of the immigrant concentration and presentation. So we are the United States of America, and we have a tapestry of different pieces that have somehow beautifully been woven together, and we can't allow ourselves to be separated by fear or fatigue. Terrorism fatigue is setting in, but this is nothing new, ladies and gentlemen. Look what happened in the 1800s when the Chinese had built our railroad tracks from New York all the way to California. There was an abundance of Chinese, and then Congress dealt with the same kind of fear, and eventually the Chinese Exclusion Acts were reversed. And we've had stains on our history that we've kind of learned from, and we've recovered as the pendulum changes from a concern for our homeland to being back in the entrepreneurial mode that we ought to be. I don't think we should be governing by fear. I think we have to look and listen and then learn from history and life's experience and respect the differences, because it really makes us stronger.
I hope that you're right, but I don't think we can compare an era where there was where there were telegraph ways of finding out about things going on around the country versus what's going on around the world today with the internet. I don't think that those are transposable ideas necessarily about how things will go. I don't know that history's precedents fit today's situation. And, I hope that I'm wrong. It'd be nice if we learn from history, but I think what we've learned in the past 75 years since Auschwitz, or 73 years since Auschwitz closed and the other concentration camps closed, that didn't necessarily mark a threshold for how people will treat one another. I mean, recently there were hundreds of Nairobis who were killed. There were women and children because they were Christians. They did not fit what the people who killed them thought Nairobis should be.
Right.
So,
but had we had social media then, and some of the technology and some of the advancements that we've made, we wouldn't have had the kind of atrocities, and the kind of accountability in politics has changed. The technology has made things easier for us in many ways to advance, and yet I think that with the wrong people at the helm, it's just as easy to advance or to detract or to become a negative force.
No question. By the way, so you're originally, he's not a native New Jerseyan, by the way, if you read a little bit about his bio.
He's from Queens.
He's from Queens. And did you go to one of the 4 elite high schools, or did you go to a local high school?
I went to Yeshiva Day School. It was the Manhattan Hebrew High School in the Bronx, you should know, and I eventually moved to Queens. I was raised in Forest Hills. I was, again, with the 112 precinct as an auxiliary police officer, and I lost the toss-up coin with my wife after my mom passed away as to where we should move, and I made the best of it in Bergen County without any regret.
Oy. By the way, since you represented, since you were on the opposite side of the Gotti case, you were not the defense attorneys. You weren't there with Barry Slotnick and Bruce Cutler. My claim to fame, one of my claims to fame, is that I gave John Gotti his first nickname, the Dapper Don, when I was at the Post.
Yeah, Barry is a dear friend, and his son Stuart, also. They're iconic lawyers that I've had the privilege of getting to know, like Ben Brofman and Alan Dershowitz and scores of others through the years. We earned their trust on immigration matters for a generation, and it's been a privilege to serve and to remain in the collegiality of some of these colleagues are still at the U.S. Attorney's Office because they're career prosecutors.
Right. And
that seasoning is so important because modern-day challenges sometimes need old-school gumption to present.
Agreed. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Ardina or John, but unless it's changed recently, Barry Slotnick, the permatanned lawyer with the perfect haircut, is a Scarsdalian. I'm not sure he still lives in Scarsdale, but for many, many years.
Why am I not surprised?
Nor am I. I understand. No? Barry Slotnick, I'm from more of the poorer towns. I'm a poorer Jew. And my wife grew up near St. John's. So
I have family in Scarsdale, and I'm a big fan of Westchester. It was between Westchester and Bergen County. Bergen County won because of its proximity to New York, and I have to tell you that I have never regretted that decision, and a lot of our close friends live there. You're doing a fine job in raising consciousness in a community, and it's so important that we continue to have dialogue and discussion even when we disagree.
I want to thank you very much. We have no parting gift for you other than our thanks. Ardino, we have a guest next week. Who might that be?
Megan Meehan, who is a playwright. She's got a play working in Long Island, and you're going to hear all about it, how to write it.
I'm going to cut you off right now. Tomorrow, everybody, including people in New Jersey who may be listening because of our guest, tomorrow's Election Day.
And democracy is not a spectator sport.
And I would hope that everybody does the right thing, whether it's raining out, whether there's wind, whether it's sunny out, or whether there are frogs in your driveway. Get out and vote. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. You all have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye now.